What if motivation isn't the thing that gets you started, but the thing that shows up after you've already begun? In today's episode, we're exploring The Motivation Myth by Jeff Haden, a book that completely challenges the traditional way we think about motivation, success, and achievement. Motivation is not the starting point of success. Action is. Most people assume that motivation works like a spark that suddenly appears and pushes them into action. They wait for the right moment, the right mood, or an emotional boost that will make everything feel easier. Jeff Haden explains that this is a misleading illusion. In reality, motivation is rarely what comes first. Instead, it is something that develops only after action has already begun. Waiting for motivation creates a cycle of delay and frustration. When people depend on feeling motivated before starting, they often postpone important tasks repeatedly. They tell themselves they will begin when they feel ready, energetic, or inspired. But that moment rarely comes. As a result, time passes, progress stops, and goals remain unfulfilled. This pattern leads to the false belief that they are not motivated people, when in fact the real issue is that they have misunderstood how motivation actually works. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When a person takes even a small step toward a goal, something important happens. Progress begins. That progress generates a sense of accomplishment, and that feeling naturally creates motivation to continue. In other words, motivation is the emotional response to progress, not the cause of it. You start with action, even if it is small or imperfect. That action leads to visible or measurable progress. Progress then creates satisfaction, energy, and a sense of forward movement. These feelings are what people interpret as motivation. Once motivation appears, it becomes easier to continue working, which creates even more progress. This forms a powerful cycle where action and motivation reinforce each other continuously. At the beginning of any task or goal, there is often resistance. It feels difficult, slow, or even uncomfortable to start. However, once you begin and push through that initial resistance, momentum starts to build. Each small action makes the next action easier. Over time, the effort required decreases while motivation and confidence increase. This is why starting is often the hardest part of any goal, but also the most important. Motivation is unstable and unpredictable. It depends on emotional state, energy levels, environment, sleep, stress, and countless other factors. Because of this, it cannot be trusted as a reliable system for achieving long-term success. If you depend on motivation, you give control of your life to something inconsistent and outside your control. On the other hand, action is always available. No matter how you feel, you can take a step forward. Highly successful individuals are not necessarily more motivated than others. Instead, they behave differently. They do not wait for motivation to begin. They simply start working. Even when they do not feel like it, they take the first step. They understand that motivation is a result, not a requirement. Over time, their consistent action generates more motivation, which helps them continue. Small actions are enough to start the process. You do not need massive effort or perfect conditions to begin. Even a tiny step, writing one sentence, making one call, or working for just a few minutes, can break inertia. Once movement begins, psychological resistance decreases. The mind shifts from avoidance to engagement, and the process becomes easier. People often misunderstand motivation because they only notice it at its peak moments. They remember times when they felt highly inspired and assume that was the cause of their success. But they forget the many moments where action came first, even without motivation. In reality, those small, unmotivated actions are what created the conditions for motivation to appear later. Motivation is not a magical force that appears before action. It is the byproduct of action itself. If you want to feel motivated, you must begin working. If you wait to feel motivated, you will likely never start. Success does not begin with inspiration or emotional energy. It begins with movement. Once you take the first step, motivation follows, momentum builds, and progress becomes self-sustaining. Success is not a straight, perfectly planned path. It is a flexible, evolving process built on action, experimentation, and adaptation. Many people imagine success as a linear journey where you set a goal, follow a fixed plan, and eventually achieve the result. This is not how real success works. In reality, progress is messy, unpredictable, and full of adjustments along the way. When someone is too attached to a single goal or a single method, they may ignore valuable opportunities that appear along the way. They may also fail to notice when their current approach is not working effectively. This can lead to frustration, wasted effort, and sometimes even giving up completely when expectations are not met. Success is not about sticking rigidly to one plan, but about continuous experimentation. Instead of committing to one perfect strategy from the beginning, successful people try different approaches, test ideas, and observe the results. They learn from what works and what does not work, and they adjust their actions accordingly. This process of trial, feedback, and improvement is what actually leads to progress. Focus is still important because it helps you take action in a general direction. However, flexibility ensures that you are not trapped in a single path. Without flexibility, focus becomes limiting. With flexibility, focus becomes powerful because it allows you to move forward while still adapting to reality. Success rarely follows a predictable plan. People often assume that successful individuals simply followed a clear roadmap from start to finish. In truth, most successful journeys involve mistakes, detours, and unexpected changes. Many opportunities appear only after you start taking action, not before. If you are too focused on one outcome, you may miss these unexpected opportunities entirely. People often become emotionally attached to their goals or their plans. This emotional attachment can make it difficult to change direction, even when evidence suggests that a different approach might work better. This leads to persistence in the wrong direction instead of intelligent adaptation. Real success comes from progressive learning through action. Every attempt provides feedback, and that feedback helps refine your next step. Over time, these small adjustments accumulate and lead to meaningful results. In this way, success is less about getting everything right at the beginning and more about improving continuously as you move forward. Instead of asking, "What is the perfect plan?" successful people focus on asking, "What can I try next?" This mindset keeps them active, engaged, and open to new possibilities. It also reduces fear of failure, because each action is seen as a learning opportunity rather than a final judgment. Too much rigid focus can limit growth, while adaptable action increases the chances of success. By staying flexible, experimenting with different approaches, and learning from experience, you significantly improve your ability to achieve your goals. Success is not about following one fixed path with extreme focus. Instead, it is about taking action, staying open to change, and continuously adjusting your direction based on real-world feedback. Many people fail not because their goals are wrong, but because they choose the wrong process to reach those goals. In other words, they set a destination, but then rely on methods, habits, or routines that do not actually lead them there. If the process does not match the goal, progress becomes slow, inconsistent, or completely ineffective. This is why simply working hard is not enough. You must also ensure that how you work is aligned with what you want to achieve. Goals are not just outcomes, they are instructions for action. A clear goal should naturally guide what you do every day. Instead of asking, "What should I do today?" you should be asking, "What actions will directly move me toward my goal?" When your goal is clear, it automatically filters your decisions and behaviors. Many people reverse this process. They choose a routine or method first, often based on comfort, habit, or imitation, and then hope it will lead them to success. However, this approach is flawed because not all processes are effective for all goals. The same effort applied in the wrong direction produces little or no meaningful progress. Successful people constantly adjust their process based on results. They do not blindly stick to a method just because it is familiar. Instead, they observe what is working and what is not, and they refine their actions accordingly. This continuous adjustment ensures that their process remains aligned with their goal. Clarity of goal is essential for building an effective process. Without a clear goal, it is impossible to design the right steps. Vague goals lead to vague actions, while specific goals lead to focused and effective behavior. The more precise your goal, the easier it becomes to identify the correct process. Motivation is not required when your process is clear and effective. When you know exactly what needs to be done and see that it leads to progress, action becomes easier and more automatic. This reduces dependence on emotional motivation and increases consistency. People often overcomplicate success by focusing too much on planning and not enough on execution. Haden argues that once the goal is defined, the focus should shift quickly to action and improvement of the process through real feedback. Success comes from doing, learning, and adjusting, not from perfect planning. Your goal should act as a compass that constantly directs and refines your actions. If your process does not move you closer to your goal, it must be changed. If it does, it should be reinforced and repeated. Success is not just about setting the right goal. It is about building and continuously improving the right process that leads directly to that goal. Lasting happiness does not come from one big achievement. It comes from continuous progress and repeated small wins over time. In other words, happiness is not a destination you arrive at once. It is a byproduct of ongoing achievement. Many people believe they will be happy once they achieve a major goal, such as getting a dream job, earning a certain amount of money, or reaching a specific milestone. However, once that goal is achieved, the feeling of happiness is often temporary. After a short period, people tend to set new goals and return to the same cycle of wanting more. Because of this, happiness is not tied to a single outcome. Instead, it is tied to the process of achieving and progressing repeatedly. Serial achievers are happier because they are constantly working toward and achieving new goals. They do not rely on one big success to define their satisfaction. Instead, they create a continuous flow of smaller achievements that keep them engaged, motivated, and fulfilled. Achievement itself creates a powerful emotional reward. Each time you make progress, complete a task, or reach a milestone, your brain experiences a sense of accomplishment. This feeling is what contributes to happiness, not just the final result of a long-term goal. A progress is more important for happiness than perfection. People often believe they need perfect outcomes to feel satisfied, but in reality, consistent improvement and forward movement are what generate long-term fulfillment. Serial achievers do not depend on external validation or rare big wins. Instead, they build their happiness through consistent action, learning, and improvement. This creates a lifestyle where success and happiness reinforce each other continuously. When people focus too much on one ultimate goal, they often feel pressure, stress, and disappointment if progress is slow. This can actually reduce motivation and make the process feel heavy. In contrast, breaking goals into smaller achievements creates frequent moments of success, which keep motivation and happiness high. Achievement builds identity. When you consistently achieve small goals, you begin to see yourself as someone who gets things done. This identity strengthens confidence and reinforces positive behavior patterns, creating a long-term cycle of success and satisfaction. Happiness is not something that arrives after success. It is something that is generated during the process of achieving. Each step forward contributes to a sense of purpose and fulfillment. The most fulfilled people are not those who achieve one big goal and stop, but those who continuously set, pursue, and achieve new goals throughout their lives. Happiness is not found at the finish line. It is created through the ongoing process of becoming a serial achiever. Wishing for success is not a strategy. It is a form of inaction disguised as optimism. Many people believe that if they want something badly enough, think positively, or hope for the best, success will eventually come. However, Haden explains that this mindset has no real connection to achievement in the real world. Hope without action creates illusion, not progress. When people rely only on wishing or hoping, they feel emotionally connected to their goals, but they do not actually move toward them. This creates a false sense of effort, where they feel like they are trying, but in reality, nothing is changing. Success is built on behavior, not belief alone. While positive thinking can support motivation, it cannot replace action. No amount of wishing can substitute for consistent effort, learning, and adjustment. Real progress only happens when thoughts are converted into actions. People often confuse desire with commitment. Many individuals strongly desire success, but they are not truly committed to the process required to achieve it. Commitment is shown through action, not emotion. Wishing reflects what someone wants, but behavior reflects what they are actually willing to do. Hoping keeps people passive. When individuals rely on hope, they tend to wait for circumstances to change instead of actively changing their circumstances. This passivity delays progress and reduces the chances of achieving meaningful results. Successful people do not rely on hope as a strategy. Instead, they focus on systems, habits, and consistent action. They understand that outcomes are created through repeated behavior, not through optimism alone. This is why they prioritize doing over wishing. Wishing can sometimes become emotionally satisfying in the short term because it allows people to feel connected to their dreams without facing the discomfort of action. However, in the long term, it leads to frustration because there is no real progress to support those dreams. Action eliminates the need for hope. When you are actively working toward your goal, you are no longer relying on uncertain expectations. Instead, you are creating tangible progress, which builds confidence and clarity. Hoping and wishing without action is the least effective approach to achieving any meaningful goal. Success requires effort, experimentation, adjustment, and persistence, not passive optimism. Wishing and hoping feel good, but only action creates results. Real success begins when you stop hoping and start doing. Relying on willpower is actually one of the weakest and least reliable strategies for long-term success. Successful people do not depend on willpower. They design their environment, habits, and systems so that willpower is barely needed at all. Willpower is limited. It is like a mental battery that drains throughout the day as you make decisions, resist distractions, and push yourself to do difficult tasks. Because it is limited, anyone who depends on willpower alone will eventually struggle, procrastinate, or give up when that mental energy runs low. Instead of increasing willpower, you should reduce the need for it. This is done by building routines, systems, and environments that make good decisions automatic rather than difficult. When the right actions become easy and habitual, success no longer depends on motivation or self-control. Habits are more powerful than willpower. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires mental effort or emotional energy. You simply do it automatically. This is why successful people focus on building strong routines instead of constantly trying to force themselves to stay disciplined. Environment shapes behavior more than intention. If your environment is filled with distractions, temptations, or obstacles, you will constantly need willpower to resist them. But if your environment is designed to support your goals, good behavior becomes easier and more natural. Many people fail not because they lack motivation or strength, but because they rely too heavily on self-control. They try to force themselves into action every day instead of creating a system that makes action unavoidable. Over time, this approach becomes exhausting and unsustainable. Eliminating decisions reduces willpower usage. Every decision you make, no matter how small, uses mental energy. Successful people reduce unnecessary decisions by creating structure and consistency in their lives. This frees up mental energy for more important tasks. Discipline is easier when the process is simple and automatic. When you remove complexity and friction from your goals, you no longer need to rely on motivation or willpower to take action. The behavior becomes part of your identity and routine. People often misunderstand self-control. They believe successful individuals are constantly resisting temptation, but in reality, many of them have already removed those temptations from their environment. They do not rely on resistance. They rely on design. Willpower should not be your main tool for success. Instead, your goal should be to build systems where willpower is rarely required at all. Stop trying to increase willpower. Instead, reduce the need for it by building habits, systems, and environments that make success automatic. Success becomes much easier when you consistently ask yourself the right question. Instead of overthinking, doubting, or searching for perfect strategies, one simple guiding question can keep your actions aligned and effective. Most people struggle not because they lack information, but because they lack clarity. They get stuck in analysis, confusion, or trying to figure out the best possible option. This often leads to delay and inaction. However, when you have a clear guiding question, decision-making becomes faster and more focused. The key question introduced is, what is the next action that will move me closer to my goal? This question shifts attention away from perfection and toward progress. Instead of worrying about doing everything right, you focus only on the next useful step. This keeps you moving forward consistently, even when the full path is unclear. Clarity does not come before action. It comes from action. When you take small steps guided by the right question, you gain feedback. That feedback helps you adjust your direction and improve your process. Over time, clarity builds naturally through experience. This one question removes unnecessary complexity. Many people overcomplicate their goals by thinking about too many options at once. But when you simplify your thinking to one guiding question, your mind becomes more focused and your actions become more intentional. This question prevents procrastination. Instead of waiting for motivation or perfect conditions, you immediately shift into problem-solving mode. You stop asking, "What should I do someday?" and start asking, "What can I do right now?" This question helps eliminate distractions. When you are clear about the next action that matters, it becomes easier to ignore activities that do not contribute to your goal. This naturally improves productivity without requiring extra discipline or willpower. Successful people constantly operate in this mindset. They do not get overwhelmed by long-term complexity. Instead, they break everything down into the next actionable step and focus only on executing that step effectively. Clarity, focus, and progress come from consistently asking the right question and acting on the answer. You don't need all the answers. You only need to know the next right step and act on it immediately. Success is not about vague concepts like working smarter. It is about identifying and consistently executing a specific, measurable set of actions that lead to results. The phrase "work smarter" is often misleading because it is too abstract. People hear it, but they don't know exactly what it means or how to apply it. As a result, they keep searching for better shortcuts or more efficient methods instead of focusing on what actually drives progress. Instead of thinking in vague terms, the author introduces the idea of your number. This refers to the specific activity or set of actions that directly produces results in your chosen goal. Every meaningful goal has a small number of actions that truly matter, and everything else is secondary. Clarity beats efficiency when it comes to success. It is more important to know exactly what to do than to constantly try to optimize how you do it. Once you know your number, the critical action that creates results, you should focus on repeating it consistently. Most people waste time on low-impact activities while believing they are being productive. They stay busy with planning, learning, or organizing, but avoid the core actions that actually produce progress. This creates the illusion of productivity without real results. Progress comes from repetition, not variation. Instead of constantly changing strategies or looking for better methods, successful people identify what works and do it repeatedly. Consistency in the right actions is far more powerful than constantly trying to work smarter. Every goal has a core driver, a small number of actions that produce most of the results. Once you identify that driver, your job is simple. Focus on it and eliminate distractions that do not contribute to it. Chasing efficiency too early can actually slow down progress. Many people try to optimize their process before they even know what works. Haden argues that you should first focus on identifying what works, and only then think about improving efficiency. Success is not complicated once you remove unnecessary activities. When you strip away distractions and focus only on your number, progress becomes clearer, more predictable, and easier to maintain. Success is not about doing everything better. It is about doing the right thing repeatedly until results appear. Stop trying to work smarter in vague ways. Instead, identify your number, the action that truly matters, and focus on doing it consistently and relentlessly. Success does not come from simply having a coach who motivates you. It comes from learning directly from people who are already performing at a high level and understanding exactly what they do differently. Many people believe a coach's main role is to provide motivation, encouragement, or accountability. While these things can help, they are not what actually produces success. Real progress comes from learning proven behaviors, systems, and actions that already work in the real world. Instead of relying on general coaching or advice, you should focus on studying and modeling a pro, someone who is already achieving the results you want. A pro is not just knowledgeable, they are actively successful in the specific area you want to improve. Experience is more valuable than theory. Many coaches or advisors may understand concepts, but professionals have already tested those concepts through real-world action. By observing pros, you can learn what actually produces results, not just what sounds good in theory. Pros reveal the real process of success. This includes the small habits, daily routines, decision-making patterns, and consistent actions that are often invisible from the outside. These practical behaviors are far more valuable than abstract motivation. Modeling a pro shortens the learning curve. Instead of experimenting blindly or relying on general advice, you can adopt proven methods and avoid unnecessary mistakes. This allows you to progress faster and more efficiently. Many people waste time seeking inspiration instead of studying execution. Motivation alone does not create results. What truly matters is understanding exactly what successful people do and applying those behaviors consistently. A good pro does not just show you what to do, they show you what actually works in practice. This includes failures, adjustments, and refinements that are not always visible in simplified advice. Success becomes more predictable when you follow proven patterns. Instead of guessing or hoping for success, you reduce uncertainty by copying strategies that already produce results. Learning from real performers is more powerful than seeking motivational support or generic coaching. Don't look for someone to motivate you. Look for someone who is already successful and learn exactly how they achieve their results. Then apply it consistently. Real success does not come from doing more things, but from focusing only on the right things and eliminating everything else. High achievers are not people who do everything. They are people who deliberately do fewer things, but with greater focus, consistency, and impact. Most people believe productivity means being busy all the time, multitasking, and constantly adding more tasks to their day. However, this approach often leads to exhaustion without meaningful progress. Being busy is not the same as being effective. Less activity can actually lead to more results when it is focused on the right actions. When you remove unnecessary tasks and distractions, you free up time and energy to focus on what truly drives progress toward your goal. Success comes from identifying and prioritizing high-impact actions. These are the specific activities that produce real results. Everything else, although it may feel productive, is often just noise that slows you down. Doing fewer things improves quality. When your attention is not divided across many tasks, you can perform each important action with greater depth, accuracy, and consistency. This naturally leads to better outcomes. Simplification increases execution speed. When you reduce the number of things you are trying to manage, decision-making becomes easier, stress decreases, and progress becomes faster and more direct. Many people fail because they try to do too much at once. They set multiple goals, chase multiple priorities, and spread their energy too thin. This lack of focus prevents them from making meaningful progress in any one area. Successful people are highly selective. They say no to most things, so they can say yes to the few things that truly matter. This ability to eliminate distractions is one of the most important skills for achieving long-term success. Doing less requires clarity. You must clearly understand what actually matters in your goal, so you can confidently remove everything else. Without clarity, people tend to keep adding tasks instead of removing them. Productivity is not about doing more. It is about doing less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. You achieve more success not by increasing your workload, but by focusing only on essential actions and eliminating everything unnecessary. Motivation is not the cause of success. It is the result of success-producing actions. Most people misunderstand how achievement works. They believe they need motivation, inspiration, confidence, or willpower before they can begin pursuing their goals. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not those who wait until they feel ready. They are the ones who start before they feel ready and allow motivation, confidence, and momentum to develop through action. Action comes first. Motivation is often viewed as the spark that starts the journey, but in reality, motivation is generated by progress. When people take action and see results, even small results, they become more motivated to continue. This creates a cycle where action leads to progress, progress creates motivation, and motivation encourages further action. Success is built through processes rather than goals alone. Goals are important because they provide direction, but goals by themselves do not create results. What matters is the daily process, the habits, routines, and behaviors that move you forward. Successful people focus less on distant outcomes and more on consistently executing the actions that lead to those outcomes. Pros reveal the real process of success. This includes the small habits, daily routines, decision-making patterns, and consistent actions that are often invisible from the outside. These practical behaviors are far more valuable than abstract motivation. Modeling a pro shortens the learning curve. Instead of experimenting blindly or relying on general advice, you can adopt proven methods and avoid unnecessary mistakes. This allows you to progress faster and more efficiently. Many people waste time seeking inspiration instead of studying execution. Motivation alone does not create results. What truly matters is understanding exactly what successful people do and applying those behaviors consistently. A good pro does not just show you what to do. They show you what actually works in practice. This includes failures, adjustments, and refinements that are not always visible in simplified advice. Success becomes more predictable when you follow proven patterns. Instead of guessing or hoping for success, you reduce uncertainty by copying strategies that already produce results. Learning from real performers is more powerful than seeking motivational support or generic coaching. Don't look for someone to motivate you. Look for someone who is already successful and learn exactly how they achieve their results. Then apply it consistently. Real success does not come from doing more things, but from focusing only on the right things and eliminating everything else. High achievers are not people who do everything. They are people who deliberately do fewer things, but with greater focus, consistency, and impact. Most people believe productivity means being busy all the time, multitasking, and constantly adding more tasks to their day. However, this approach often leads to exhaustion without meaningful progress. Being busy is not the same as being effective. Less activity can actually lead to more results when it is focused on the right actions. When you remove unnecessary tasks and distractions, you free up time and energy to focus on what truly drives progress toward your goal. Success comes from identifying and prioritizing high-impact actions. These are the specific activities that produce real results. Everything else, although it may feel productive, is often just noise that slows you down. Doing fewer things improves quality. When your attention is not divided across many tasks, you can perform each important action with greater depth, accuracy, and consistency. This naturally leads to better outcomes. Simplification increases execution speed. When you reduce the number of things you are trying to manage, decision-making becomes easier, stress decreases, and progress becomes faster and more direct. Many people fail because they try to do too much at once. They set multiple goals, chase multiple priorities, and spread their energy too thin. This lack of focus prevents them from making meaningful progress in any one area. Successful people are highly selective. They say no to most things, so they can say yes to the few things that truly matter. This ability to eliminate distractions is one of the most important skills for achieving long-term success. Doing less requires clarity. You must clearly understand what actually matters in your goal, so you can confidently remove everything else. Without clarity, people tend to keep adding tasks instead of removing them. Productivity is not about doing more. It is about doing less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. You achieve more success not by increasing your workload, but by focusing only on essential actions and eliminating everything unnecessary. Motivation is not the cause of success. It is the result of success-producing actions. Most people misunderstand how achievement works. They believe they need motivation, inspiration, confidence, or willpower before they can begin pursuing their goals. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not those who wait until they feel ready. They are the ones who start before they feel ready and allow motivation, confidence, and momentum to develop through action. Action comes first. Motivation is often viewed as the spark that starts the journey, but in reality, motivation is generated by progress. When people take action and see results, even small results, they become more motivated to continue. This creates a cycle where action leads to progress. Progress creates motivation, and motivation encourages further action. Success is built through processes rather than goals alone. Goals are important because they provide direction, but goals by themselves do not create results. What matters is the daily process, the habits, routines, and behaviors that move you forward. Successful people focus less on distant outcomes and more on consistently executing the actions that lead to those outcomes. Many people become overwhelmed because they focus only on large, long-term goals. They imagine the final destination and feel discouraged by how far away it seems. However, progress is made through small, achievable steps. Every small victory builds confidence, creates momentum, and strengthens commitment to the process. Success does not require extraordinary talent or perfect circumstances. Instead, it requires consistency. Ordinary actions performed consistently over time often produce extraordinary results. This idea is empowering because it places success within reach of anyone who is willing to take action and remain committed to the process. Waiting is the enemy of progress. Waiting for motivation, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect plan, or waiting for ideal conditions only delays growth. The longer people wait, the more difficult it becomes to begin. Action breaks this cycle and creates the conditions for improvement. Over time, repeated action changes how people see themselves. When you consistently take action toward a goal, you begin to view yourself as someone who follows through, someone who improves, and someone who achieves results. This new identity becomes a powerful source of long-term motivation and confidence. Success is not a mystery. It is not reserved for a lucky few or for people with special gifts. Success is the predictable outcome of a simple process: taking action, learning from experience, making adjustments, and repeating that cycle consistently over time. You may not always control how you feel, but you can control what you do. And by controlling your actions, you can gradually change your results, your confidence, and even your future. Don't wait to feel motivated. Take action first. Progress creates motivation. Motivation creates momentum, and momentum creates success. The path to achievement begins not with inspiration, but with the simple decision to start. Stop waiting for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect mood, the perfect plan, or the perfect moment. Those things may never come. The people who achieve their goals are not necessarily more motivated than everyone else. They simply take action before they feel ready. Every achievement begins with a small step. Every habit starts with a single action. And every success story begins when someone decides to start, even in the absence of motivation. Remember, motivation is not the spark that creates action. More often, action is the spark that creates motivation. So whatever goal you've been putting off, whatever dream you've been waiting to pursue, ask yourself one simple question: what is the next action that will move me closer to my goal? Then take that step today. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could benefit from this message. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating content that inspires growth, success, and positive transformation.